channel. It's Terry. And I'm not sure if this is going to be an Orchid Today video or not. Today I've sort of been thinking deeply about YouTube and orchids in general as a hobby. Just the influence of YouTube, positive and negative, just things, essentials to orchid growing. I would say the number one thing is when we all start with this hobby, it's usually initiated by an emotional reaction, response, either a gift given, or we are in a big box store, grocery store, and we see, catches our eye, and all of a sudden we're intrigued, and then we catch the bug, and then you start to begin to notice that there are different kinds of orchids, and they in turn get your fascination, and you in turn buy as much as you can. It's when you see them, you just buy them. Probably for the majority of the people that do that, a lot of those plants end up dying. And more or less the reason for that is because the orchid hobby continued to be an emotional hobby. It's not based on any knowledge. It's only based on the visual satisfaction. And I'm sure that is why there is the prevalence of, you know, the big box stores carrying the orchids that are more prone to perish than they are to succeed in reblooming, and some of those plants even die before the blooms bloom out. But yet the buyer is in that emotional, addicted state that they just keep buying to fulfill that. So Roger just did a video on that, kind of. I think that they should, all those big box Phalaenopsis especially, they should include a little Ziploc bag of bark to repot. And they should say you should repot it instead of just saying put an ice cube on it a day, one a day, or whatever it is. It's ridiculous. So I would say you have to know your boundaries. You have to know your income. You have to know how you're going to grow these plants. And you have to switch. The hobby has to switch from an emotional driven hobby to more one of practicality. Because you really have to begin to think at some point about finances. You have to think about that you have to think in a conservation way, because minus the big box store orchids that are mass produced, these are rare gems. And even some of the big box, the crosses that are multi-produced, those are not forever. So I have begun to think of in terms of conservation. If there's a plant that I see that I like, that I know that I can't grow in my environment, I'm not going to, I'll save it for someone else instead of me killing that plant, and then that plant's gone forever, and there may never be another one available. You just never know. So you have to switch from, as I said, you have to know your boundaries. And in order to do that, you really have to do your research. You have to know your environment, and you have to know what you're capable, and you have to know what the plant wants. You will begin to stop just buying plants, or buying first and asking later. I think that is the number one failure of orchid people. And we all do it, but you have to, nowadays, especially with the internet, it's better to ask than to, as I said, kill a plant that someone else would better take care of and keep it in circulation, because these are rare babies. So in that mode of research, that segs into number 2, which I would say is research. Doing your research on what your capabilities are. Do you need more light? Do you need more humidity? Knowing what each of these plants want, you can't treat them generally as one, as a whole. You have to treat them as individuals. And you have to treat them as children. You do, because they are alive just like we are, and they require the same things that we do in order to survive. So you really have to do that, and there are several ways that you can do your research, and I'm not going to go into that. There are local orchid societies, there's YouTube, there's the internet. So there are places online now where, online or in your local community, that are there to help you either enhance your hobby or to, you know, give you the final opinion that it's not for you, it's not for everybody, which sort of is number 3, which is patience. You have to have an extreme amount of patience to grow orchids. You really do. I think the majority of people who grow orchids do not grow them like weeds, like a lot of what you see on YouTube. It's more of a struggle. It's not so easy as, there are easy principles and following good culture and all of that, but there's a lot more factors involved in maintaining a successful collection. It really is. It really, really is. It's not so simple. So in that tune, you really cannot expect to see overnight success, nor you should not expect to see plants bloom that are in bud. I mean, you just really need to wait and see what the plant wants to do, and when it does, then it will present itself. Also, that includes constantly being too over vigilant, always touching the plant, always switching the media, things of that nature. I just think that is a detriment. These plants are survivors, and I think they do a lot better with benign neglect. That's just my opinion. All of these are my opinions. I'm an opinionated person, and I do not deny that. I admit that freely. So, yeah, I do. And I'd say the last thing that I'll say is just more or less minding the poo. Power of observation. We are in this orchid thing because of, as I said, an emotional attachment. It's all visceral. It's all the flow of, those chemicals are going through our brain when we see buds, when we see new growths, when we see roots, when we see flowers. So it's highly satisfying. And so you have to really watch your plants, and you have to let them tell you what they need. Do they need more water? Are they getting too much light? Is it too cold? Is their leaf color too dark of a green? Versus, are their leaves browning? Or are they browning excessively? Is it too dry? Watching our plants is up there. It shouldn't be the last thing that I'm talking about, but watching what the plant tells you, whether it's stalled or whether it's growing, whether it's browning, whether it's flowering, whether it's shriveling, it's all a message that was meant to be paid attention to solve. So in that regard, minding your poo, your powers of observation, is key. And on that note, other than that, you should really just have fun. In this day of YouTube, it's so hard, especially if you have a channel or if you're involved in a society and you are involved in the society and you show off your plants. Can be a competition at times. But above all of that, you really need to, above all of that, the show and the feeling of accomplishment, you should just have fun. At the end of the day, you should just have fun. If you're not having fun, if it's work, then something has got to give. Just enjoy it. And on that note, I am going to close the video, and if you've enjoyed it, press the like button. Bye.